I said, I can beat all those guys. They're like, well, go on then. Stop talking about it. Just go and do it. And so I think so many people talk about the things that they could do, and then later on they'll be looking back and saying, oh, I could have done that. So yeah, if you can just find stuff you're passionate about, you're just gonna have a much better life.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my show. I am your host, Nimai Delgado. Today on the show, we have one of the most... I
gotta stop you a second, because there's...
Is there hair?
Got it.
Oh, that's so sweet of you.
That was loose.
He's a gentle guy. I was literally about to say... I was literally about to say he's one of the most dangerous guests I've had on the show, but he wouldn't hurt a fly. His name is James Wilks. He is the producer and the star of the GameChangers documentary that was released in 2019. He wears many hats. He's also the winner of the Ultimate Fighter Championship Season 9, and just a pretty inspiring guy. You're kind of hard to read a lot of times because you do so many things, which is why I wanted to have you on the show and just talk about some of the things that you've been up to since the GameChangers. So welcome to the show, James.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for the kind words.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming up. We actually just saw each other last night, which was cool because we haven't seen each other in a while, but we got to watch the new documentary that you are also a producer on.
Executive producer, yeah.
Executive producer, called Eating Our Way to Extinction.
Yeah, along with some other folks, not just me. So
yeah.
Kate Winslet, Richard Branson, Joseph Pace, and quite a few others. But yeah, it's not like a GameChangers follow-up, but it's in the sort of what the GameChangers was for plant-based eating and performance and health. This is sort of the similar for the environmental impact of what we're doing to the planet.
Yeah, I found the film very powerful. The cinematography was really powerful. The graphics that they shared were really easy to read, and to just the information that they shared was a lot, but in a digestible way that really empowers the individual to start looking at the choices they're making and what they're consuming and the deleterious effects it's having on the planet. So how did you get involved in that film?
I think they just reached out to us looking for help. They knew that we'd had a lot of experience and success with the GameChangers. I mean, the GameChangers appears to be the most viewed documentary of all time, with over 100 million views. We had 1.5 billion media impressions, over 4,000 organic press articles. So I think, people knew about that. And so they reached out to us for help, regarding distribution and marketing. And Joseph, the main writer on the GameChangers, also helped with a lot of the editing towards the end. So they just wanted our help, and for that, they graciously gave us executive producer credits for helping out.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a very powerful film. I can't wait for everybody else to see it. Do we have a release date on it yet?
Okay, it's coming out on iTunes and other TiVo platforms on October 1st this year. So it's going to be on a bunch of different platforms online, so people can find it all over the world.
How do you think the reception is going to be of another film that's highlighting kind of plant-based eating, just based off of your experience with the GameChangers and the feedback that you've got from that? Yeah,
I mean, I think that, everyone's motivated by different things, whether it's their vanity or their performance or their health. And so to have this other angle with the environment, there's been some other great films on that as well. But I think people, the time is right. And if you're hitting people with all these different angles, something's going to appeal to them. And, with plant-based eating, it's like a win-win-win-win, right? There's like so many different areas that you can help. Number one thing you can do for your health, number one thing you can do for the planet, number one thing you can do for animals. So I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people. I think people are waking up more to the realities of, what your diet can do for the impact on the environment. So there's a lot of great information in there. It's scientifically accurate and really informative. So I think it's going to have a big impact.
Yeah, I agree. I can't wait for everybody to see it. And if you're interested in the film, be sure to watch it. If this episode releases and it's already out, it's definitely worth a watch. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, just regardless of why you're interested in plant-based eating, knowing the effects of the food that you're consuming is very powerful. And I want to take this back to your personal journey. And why did you go plant-based? I know you shared a little bit of it in the GameChangers. For those of you that haven't seen it, if you haven't, be sure to watch that. But yeah, I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the story in the GameChangers. I got injured training for a fight. I thought, what can I do to, with my time to be productive? And I thought, well, I'll look into nutrition for optimal recovery and then performance, once I've healed. And came across that study about the Roman gladiators. And I was sort of shocked. How could they be eating almost exclusively, if not exclusively, plants? Just thought it had to be BS. So I started looking into it. And that wasn't enough to convince me, but that got me diving into the scientific literature and interviewing some of the world's leading, nutrition scientists. And so for me, it was sort of a selfish point of view and like, how can I recover as quickly as possible? And then after that, perform really well. And I think once you start realizing that meat and other animal products are not normal, natural, or necessary, that sort of brings down that barrier and sort of accepting some other realities like the environment and like the ethics, right? So now I'm sort of motivated by a multitude of things, but originally it was really based on my own performance.
At what point did you decide that, I'm going to take this and turn my journey into a film? Like
it was pretty early on. So I wasn't even fully committed to going plant-based. I thought, well, let's document this journey. And I thought I'd give it a try and experiment it. And as you saw in the film, like the battling ropes, 50 foot, see how long you can keep those ropes going for. And the most I'd ever done was 8 minutes and ended up doing over an hour and could have kept going. And so originally it wasn't like I'd made a goal, okay, I'm going to go completely plant-based or completely vegan. It was just, let's give it a try. And I thought we should film that and see where it went. In fact, very early on, stuff that didn't make the cut in the end, that I originally started looking into grass-fed meat and sort of more of a paleo diet because it sounded sort of natural to me and it sounded pretty cool. But the science just didn't bear out. And so, I went on wherever the path showed for the best science, and that was plant-based eating.
And how did you make the connection with Joseph? How did you guys link up?
Yeah, so Joseph's the other producer and the main writer. And so I reached out to Dr. Greger at Nutrition Facts. And at the time, Joseph Pace was the outreach coordinator. He's been plant-based for 30 years. He had some writing experience in film. And so Dr. Greger said, oh, this isn't just a dumb UFC fighter. He's asking a bunch of questions, scientific questions like leucine thresholds and different amino acid profiles. And so he passed it on to Joseph. Joseph called me up and he was like, that's it. I got to quit what I'm doing and let's focus on this project.
And at that time, you were already, you had already committed to making a documentary or just
I
documenting
sort of started
your...
filming. I started filming bits. Didn't really know if I just put it up as a sort of cool video for free on YouTube or just didn't know where it was. So it was really Joseph that helped sort of say, yeah, let's make this into a big documentary. Let's get Arnold involved and James Cameron. And it just sort of built, and snowballed over time into the big thing that it was.
At any point in that process, did you feel like, what are we doing here? Are we really going to get Arnold involved? Is this really possible?
I think I was doubting a little bit at the beginning when Joe's like, oh, we'll get this and it'll be the biggest film. And it was like, he was super confident and I thought it would be big, but we ended up sort of achieving all the things that we set out to achieve early on. So, and then even though we knew it was going to be big, I didn't think it would be as big as it actually was and the impact. I mean, metrics on Google Trends showed that interest in plant-based eating more than tripled around the world within weeks of the film hitting Netflix. So not only did a lot of people watch it, but it seems to have a big impact as well. So really proud about that.
I would really like to hear your thought, you and Joseph's thought process in the writing, and also did you use any behavioral psychology whenever you were curating what you wanted to share and how you wanted to deliver that message? Because I feel like you softened up men in particular to actually be open to listening to this message a lot more than any other film before that had done.
Yeah, I mean, so it wasn't really purposeful from the beginning. It was really my own experience to start with. So not only as an athlete, I thought I needed meat for protein and milk for bones, but as a man, there's something like I felt like I should be eating meat, right? And so we did start looking into the behavioral psychology around 2013, 2014. And the behavioral psychology sort of tracked with my own sort of feelings and beliefs. And so, there's this sort of myth that if you're male, you really need all this extra, animal protein. And I think there's a lot of, people having barbecues and, hunting and these things that feel very masculine. And there's a lot of research showing that, a lot of young men are insecure about their masculinity. So they feel a need to sort of engage in so-called masculine behavior. And there's that perception that hunting is sort of the top of that. And so, fortunately, we realized that showcasing role models, and not that I'm trying to say what a real man is, of course, but traditional male role models, athletes, firefighters, and soldiers. And it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, whether you're left wing or right wing, that sort of sports and athleticism and that type of thing sort of appeals to guys across the board. And so the film was a little bit male skewed because I'm a man, and just I think that typically 8 out of 10 vegetarians, vegans, plant eaters are female, and
Hmm.
since the film, that's dramatically shifted. So there was some behavioral psychology research that went into it, but it also tracked with my own sort of feelings at
Hmm.
the time.
So, what were some of the main objections that somebody may have from like a behavioral point of view, or maybe a psychological point of view that leaves them a little bit more closed off to the idea of reducing their meat consumption that
Yeah,
you've
well,
come
so
across?
one of the things was that people that felt bad for eating animals started feeling a little bit compassionate, and compassion is synonymous with femininity. And so those
Mm,
young men that were insecure about their masculinity, they start feeling a bit compassionate if they start caring about things, whether it's the animals or the environment or even their health. And so they start in some way feeling a little bit feminine. So there's some research by Professor Hank Rothgerber out of Bellarmine University where they gave information around health, animal welfare, environment. In the first few days, both men and women lowered their meat consumption, but after a while, the women kept their meat consumption down. This is obviously in general,
mhm.
and the men actually increased their meat consumption from their original point of view. So it just shows that information alone isn't actually that powerful. There's some sort of backfire effect.
Mm,
It's been shown also with climate change, where people sort of dig their heels in and believe more in their original position.
mhm,
But fortunately, as I said, this sort of showcasing role models can help counteract that.
mhm.
And so, the science is really important. But you also, I think some of the anecdotal stories that were in the film
Yeah,
can help shift people's, minds. And even myself, when I started reading the science, I thought, okay, this is all theoretical, but where are the people that are really
and
doing
doing
this? And
it.
then you meet people like you and like, holy crap, you can be, jacked and ripped and doing this. So the combination of the science and the sort of anecdotal stories and role models like yourself is just really powerful.
Yeah, I think it was you that told me this a long time ago that the not necessarily the message, it's the
Yeah.
messenger
Yeah. The
and
messenger
how
is
it's
the message,
delivered.
basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so, we like to say, like, if you had the biggest, strongest dude in the gym and people will go to him, how do you get so big? He said, oh, every morning I squirt lemon juice in my eyes. It doesn't matter if there's any science to it. The next day, all the guys
Yeah,
come into the gym and they've got like red eyes,
yeah.
right? So people are just more likely to buy into the sort of the anecdotes and the role models saying something.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, they should just base it on the science, but that's just the way the world is. And so if you combine those two, I think it's really powerful in terms of shifting people's opinions.
And did you find that there was some element to introduce or like to attach like pop culture to it as well? Like introduce like people like Arnold. Obviously, Arnold's like an icon in the bodybuilding and fitness space, but
Yeah.
he's kind of transcended that a long time ago, become an actor and a governor and all these things. Do you feel like having him in the film kind of lended more credibility to the plant based movement?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Arnold's not, completely plant based, but it's actually what we
Yeah.
say is, it's all or something, not all or nothing. So
Hmm.
a lot of times, if you think it's black and white and you've got to either be in or you're out, people just aren't even going to take that step to go, towards plant based eating. So I think any shift towards more plant based eating and any shift towards more eating sort of more whole, healthier foods is going to be
Hmm.
better. But I think to have Arnold, who's not, hardcore strict vegan and not motivated by ethics, for example, is good to show that, he hardly ever eaten dairy because he thinks that milk is for babies. And as he would
Hmm.
say, and like he's cut down his meat consumption 80%. But to have someone like him who is an icon, like you said, and just such a big name,
Hmm.
really added a lot of credibility to the film, I think.
Yeah, I find that like more like I don't know, something about athletes, like particular like iconic athletes that
For sure.
people follow. They really admire them in different ways and they follow suit with how they act and how they behave. And I feel like the more athletes that are coming forward and say that they're plant based, it just gives people permission to do the same thing.
Totally. And like I was saying earlier, like it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat or
Yeah.
you're really wealthy or poor. That's the great thing. I think sports and athletes
Hmm.
sort of unite people in a way.
Do you was there anything in the film that you wanted to include but you couldn't? I know you had to cut it like tremendously. Like,
Yeah, there was like 50 people that we filmed. It felt really bad that we just thought we could cram more people in. When you make a documentary, it's really better to make it around an hour and a half. We
hmm
could have kept it like 6 hours long and still had loads
hmm
of great information. Some of the expert interviews were like 4 hours long and just
wow.
tons of great information. So yeah, there's a bunch of people that I would have liked to put in, like Alexei Voivoda, the 10-time arm wrestling champion, two gold medals in the bobsled. 6'5", 270, runs the 40 meters faster than anyone in the NFL. Like just a beast. But we just sort of
hmm
it's just trying to fit different it's trying to squeeze it all in and still tell the story.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
Yeah.
you can't include all the great athletes and the great experts.
Do you feel like now that or it's been like what, almost 2 years since the film has been released? Was
Yeah,
it like
2 years.
October or
Yeah, it was
November?
September 16th was the
Oh,
theatrical release. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So it's been 2 years since the film's release.
hmm
Reflecting back, do you feel like you wish you would have included something in the film that didn't make the cut?
Um, no, I think we're pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some bits. No, I think I wouldn't have done anything really different at this point.
hmm
I mean, I wouldn't have filmed people we didn't make it in because it took longer and took more money than we probably should have spent. But it's new, right? I'd never made a film before. Joseph hadn't made a documentary before either, so it was all very new to us. So no, I think we're happy. You can always we always like to sort of say we'll aim for a 9, because if you aim for a 10, then like it never gets done and never gets finished. So
hmm
yeah, no, we're happy with it.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned in that whole process? Because it started way back in like 2013 or what was,
Yeah, well, actually, 2011 originally
Okay.
is when I first got injured and bought a used camera off of Craigslist and didn't know anyone in the plant-based space, didn't have the funding, didn't know anyone in film. And so it took a while, right, to start building up. I think one of the biggest things if someone's making a documentary is to really know what you're going after because we started filming all sorts of people, like the theoretical physicist Brian Greene or RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan. Like we thought it would
hmm
expand outside of sports and health into like
hmm
celebrities and business and just have if you're going to make a documentary, be super focused and try and sort of, although it's a documentary, you can sort of write it generally as a script of like the things that you'd like to include,
hmm
and then sort of stick to that. So do as much pre-work as possible, pre-production, and then that will cut down on the expenses and the amount of time that it takes.
Even outside of the professional or realm, like personally, what do you feel
hmm
like the biggest lesson that you learned from making that film?
Yeah. What did I learn? I mean, for me, I learned like connecting with the best people, the right people and the people that are motivated is what you're gonna, whatever product or service or whatever you're gonna do. I
Mm-hmm.
think just connecting with the right people, right? Who you know is a lot more important than what you know or how much
Mm-hmm.
money you have if you want to get something done. So I think connecting with the right people that are passionate and that have the skills and not trying to take on too much yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes it's hard to like let go of control
Yeah,
and
definitely.
try and do everything yourself. But if you can just find the right people to work with in whatever you're doing in life,
hmm
um, whether it's work or relationships or connecting with the right people, I think it was one of the biggest lessons I learned.
So how was that trying to have so many people involved in such a delicate project that you wanted to maintain this specific message? Because I mean, I assume that everybody, once they had their hands in it, they wanted to change things. They wanted to have final say in certain things, who could be in it, who could
Yeah,
be out of it. How was that like?
it's a tough process. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Like having a bunch of creative minds in the same rooms. You got the director, you got a couple of different editors, a couple of different writers, and then a couple of producers, and everyone sort of got a slightly different vision.
hmm
Joseph and I sort of retained, final cut. So we
hmm
did have the final say, even with James Cameron coming on board. It's like your film, you guys know what you're doing, you've done the research. So we were lucky to sort of maintain control. Um, but it's challenging. But you need someone to sort of challenge you on your thoughts. And so there was definitely some like heated debates and
hmm
arguments and people getting upset as we made it. And it was a tough call, like leaving people out, and especially if you like some of the athletes you
Yeah.
filmed, you feel like you want to put them in just because. Like Barney Duplessis, like great guy, Mr. Universe, bodybuilder. He was in an early cut and then unfortunately just didn't fit. And I really like him. It was tough leaving him out. So it was some hard decisions to make.
hmm
Um, they say in filmmaking, if you make some good scenes, but you have to cut it down, it's like killing your babies. Basically,
Oh
it's like you like
no.
really like that scene, and then you
Yeah.
gotta, and you were there. Especially they say sometimes you shouldn't have the same person filming on set that's in the editing room
Uh-huh.
because they've got all emotions around like the travel and meeting the people and
What happened behind
yeah,
the
and
scenes?
there's all
Yeah.
sorts of other stuff like you got a dinner with the people you're filming and then
Yeah.
it's really difficult to like separate those two. So it's not an easy thing. It's a lot more work than people realize making a film.
So it took how so 2011 to
Yeah, but
2019,
then
8 years.
like really we started raising
Right.
funds like 2013,
Yeah.
and then we sort of put
So
it on hold and realized we needed more funding and a better team. So 2014 we spent sort of doing some of that behavioral psychology research, raising
mhm.
funds, putting the team together, and then we really started back in 2015. So it was sort of in parts. It wasn't like straight through from 2011. I started filming some stuff in 2011. So it's a long process.
So like 8-year process.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
that's a long time to be working on any project. And after, I mean, you had massive success. I mean, you just said it was the most watched documentary. Is that just Netflix or is that just
No, it appears to be.
overall?
So we've had to have analysts analyze it because the Netflix and then Yoku in China, which is about twice the viewership, about 800 million of Netflix, about twice the viewership of Netflix. They won't actually give you exact numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's ways of sort of figuring out. There's a Nielsen, which does some tracking in the US for you.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's safe to say it's one of the most watched.
it's one of the
if
most
not
watched.
the
We
most,
think it's
then
the
one of
most
the most
watched,
watched.
the documentary. We're still getting like
Yeah,
250,000 roughly new people a month coming to the website.
yeah.
So what must that mean in terms of viewership, right? Because
Yeah.
not everyone who's watching it's going to the website. So
Mm-hmm.
still getting a lot of traction.
So what was it like after the release, and naturally the backlash that occurred after the release? I mean, were you expecting the amount that it received, or were you expecting more or less, or were you surprised, or how did you prepare for that? Like you knew that there was going to be people that were going to have some things to say.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be pushback, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of praise for the film, right? Obviously, everyone in the plant-based movement, loves the film. Or nearly everyone, I would say. And we got some really good sort of credibility. So, for example, it's the first documentary and still the only documentary ever accredited by the Department of Defense. So they have the Defense Health Agency. And then the American College of Lifestyle Medicine accredited it. And that was then recognized by the the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So that basically every doctor, nurse, dietitian in the United States can watch the film, take a quiz we developed, and earn sort of their ongoing medical education credits or whatever. So we got a lot of credibility from like large organizations. We were endorsed by the Special Operations Medical Association for the credibility of the film. But on the other hand, we got, some pushback. There were some articles written like in Men's Health or, some of these guys that are just either really attached to their meat consumption or in a lot of cases, they are funded by the meat industry to do research, meat and dairy industry. So we definitely got some pushback. As you probably remember, I was on Joe Rogan on his podcast. And, before that, there'd been someone going on to debunk the film.
Yeah.
And 3 hours. And I watched it thinking, if I didn't know what I knew, what would that look like to me? And I thought, if I hadn't done all the research that I'd done, I would literally buy into everything he was saying. And I had people on Instagram, they watched the film, said, hey, really like it, went vegan, feeling great. And then they watched the debunk on Joe Rogan and they said, oh, you lied to me. I've gone back to eating meat. And then I go on and do the debate and, do the debate. And then people are like, oh man, you smashed that guy. He was totally full of crap. And, I've gone back to being completely plant-based again. It's amazing how people can just switch based on just like watching a podcast.
Yeah. But that's an important point to bring up, because people are very committed to who they receive their information from or where they get their information from. And they are very easily impressionable, I guess is a good word, based off who it's coming from. So how did you prepare for that? Because I mean, even Joe Rogan, I mean, he kind of was just more moderating that discussion. But his platform is somewhere a lot of people receive information from him.
For sure.
What was it like preparing for that interview or debate? I guess is a better word for it.
Yeah. So it was funny because I knew that this guy Chris Kresser, who's an acupuncturist, was going on to debunk the film. Because he doesn't usually talk about the fact that he's an acupuncturist. He says that he's got master's level training in nutrition. But I knew that was happening, and so I tried to get onto that episode. In fact, I tried to get our chief science advisor, right? Because it seems to make more sense if you're going to put your expert up against me. It makes more sense if you put it against our expert. And Joe said, no, the film had its chance to do something. Let's have someone from the other side, sort of talk about it. So that happened. And then, it was only a few weeks later, Joe was like, okay, do you want to come on and debate the guy? I said, yeah, but can we just put our chief science guy on? And I didn't hear back for 24 hours, even though Joe had read the message. So my view is he was, asking Chris Kresser, do you want to debate their science guy? Probably looked him up, realized he had some really good credentials, dual master's degree in exercise physiology and dietetics, David Goldman, board certified in sports dietetics. And they just didn't want him on the show for some reason. So I went on to debate. And of course, I've read a lot. I think I've spent, a little over 3,000 hours now reading peer-reviewed science, since I began this journey. But I'm certainly not as versed in the nutrition as sort of our nutrition team, right? But anyway, so basically, like for the week before, just spent a whole bunch of time prepping for a bunch of different topics, not knowing what was coming up. Came up with like 150 slides. And people were saying, oh, he must have been getting all these people to build. I built all the slides myself. And people say, oh, I must have got debate training or whatever. And just sort of just prepared for it. Unfortunately, we only covered like 20 or 30% of the stuff I prepared for. But I think I just smashed every argument that they had against the film. So
yeah, I mean, I think you did. I mean, I may be a little biased, but
yeah,
I think you handled it really well. I mean, it's not the first time you've been in a ring, though.
Yeah, it felt like going to fight. I had the adrenaline, and people were like, "Oh, it looks like he's on drugs or something." 'Cause my eyes were like, I had a lot of adrenaline because this guy said, "Oh, I spent 7 hours taking apart your film."
Yeah,
and I'm saying, "Well, I spent like over 7 years making it." So like, you think you can just come in? And so I was pumped up. I didn't think the first hour of the debate was great. But didn't pick a great topic. Joe was clearly on the other guy's side. And so I think it was 3 hours and 45 minutes long, but I think after the first hour, it sort of went in my favor. And then, if people don't want to watch the whole thing, there's a couple of 20-minute videos on YouTube still that are worth watching. One on protein quantity and then one on amino acids or protein quality. I think those are worth watching because that's the biggest thing, right? People think you don't get enough protein.
Yeah.
And if you do, it's not of high enough quality. So I think those are really good 20-minute segments to go and watch on YouTube.
What do you feel like the obsession is with those two topics? I mean, that seems to be the most common argument against plant-based eating is the protein and the protein quality.
Yeah, I mean, I think the meat industry's just done a really great job. You know, when you're selling a product, right, the USP, the unique selling point or unique selling proposition, and the meat industry's just done a great job of saying, like, this is where protein comes from. And some people used to think there's, like, no protein at all in plants, right? But in reality, that's where the animals are getting it from. They're just the middlemen doing you a disservice, adding in some saturated fat and more toxins and, like, absorbing a lot of the great phytonutrients. And, you're basically doing a huge disservice. So I think the meat industry's done a great job, just like the dairy industry's done a great job of the unique selling point of calcium. You know, even though like a cup of cooked collard greens has more calcium, more bioavailable calcium and more bioavailable magnesium, which is also important for bone health, than a cup of milk without all the saturated fat and all the pus and all the other crazy stuff that comes with it. So that's where I think it stems from. And I think also if you just went back in history, I think this sort of simple mindset of like, well, if I want to build muscle, I need to eat muscle. You know?
Yeah.
It sort of seems logical. So you just think, oh, I got to eat all this flesh basically to get really strong. It's complete BS.
So after the Joe Rogan interview, the response was relatively positive for the most part.
It was good. You know, I think Joe was like praising the debate in terms of like favoring on the plant-based side. Unfortunately, he bounced back and started talking about carnivore after that, which is just odd in my view. Excuse me. The response was great overall, and went to the Joe Rogan comedy special a couple of nights ago, like the first event I've been out and about since the pandemic, and I didn't think about the fact that I've been on the podcast. So I'm used to getting recognized from the film, but then all of a sudden people coming up, oh, were you on the?
Oh, no way.
Yeah, you're on Joe Rogan podcast. Yeah. So
how was that?
Cool. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as we got inside, the mask were on, so then just cut that out. But
do you get recognized frequently these days?
Yeah, it was crazy. Like right before the pandemic, I just couldn't, like since the film came out. I think especially because we're in California, right? So if you're in California or New York, it's probably more likely people watched it. And then going to the gym and the places I go, like, down in Orange County, it's probably it's even, more biased towards people having watched it. But it's like I couldn't go like restaurant, Home Depot, at the gym, like in the middle of a set, people are kind of, I haven't finished the set yet. Or I'm in the change room, put my underwear on and people start talking about it. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. And just to hear some of the people saying, oh, I switched, maybe not all, a lot of the people have gone completely vegan. Some people are going like, oh yeah, I cut out meat, still doing a bit of eggs or whatever. Or my whole family's gone vegan. I got off my medication. It's great to hear, some of the huge impact that it's had in individuals' lives.
Yeah. Have you ever sat and thought about like that, from like the ripple effect that your efforts have made in the world? And
it's crazy. Joseph and I are really proud of it. We always think, oh, what can we do more to get like more? But if we just think what we've done already, we should, sit back and be pretty proud and just happy that it's like literally saving people's lives and, making people live longer and have better quality lives and helping the planet. Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, I think you definitely inspired. I mean, I personally have had so many experiences where people have come up to me and being like, "Oh, you're the guy in the Game Changers." Like,
That's
I went
cool.
vegan because of that film, or
Yeah.
I reduced my consumption of animal protein. And I've actually been like at restaurants where I've overheard conversations too, and that's always my
Mhm.
favorite when I overhear people talking about it, and they're like, "You got to watch the film," and they have like NFL players and like these
Yeah.
huge dudes, and you don't need meat, and they're just like dropping facts that they heard from the film.
Yeah.
And I almost texted you the other day and told you about this one that happened here in LA. So it's just so cool to see how far it's gone, like just
Yeah.
how
It's
far
crazy.
reaching it is.
Crazy. Yeah.
So where do you go from that? Like where after you've had, I mean, I'm sure you maybe experienced a little bit of burnout doing that much work for that long, and then um, do you feel like you have another project that you're working towards
Yeah,
now?
actually, I mean, we didn't really slow down much. We actually had a whole bunch of stuff planned for last year,
Yeah.
for 2020, and we were basically going to go to a whole bunch of events through so our nonprofit, which is now sort of turned into the Game Changers Institute, which is a
Mhm.
research, education, advocacy platform promoting plant-forward eating. Again, we're not trying to shove the veganism thing down your throat or vegetarianism. It's like, all or something, not all or nothing. If you want to go all the way, great.
Mhm.
Any shift, the science shows any shift to getting in more whole plant foods is like beneficial.
Mhm.
And so we basically planned through our nonprofit to do all these events, and we'd sort of planned it all out. We had a marketing team and, organizing all these live sporting events,
Mhm.
like Wimbledon or, even NASCAR and, NFL stuff going on. And we
Mhm.
had it all sort of mapped out and planned out. And then, March came and I think it was around March, right, in 2020 that
Alright,
the
shut
pandemic
down.
sort of shut everything down.
Mhm.
That kind of sucked. That we were working on all that stuff, and then we thought maybe it would clear up in a few months, and then
Yeah.
obviously just kind of rolled on. But since then, the Game Changers Institute's put out, some review papers. David Goldman just recently wrote one on the DS scoring system, which is like the
Mhm.
latest protein quality scoring system. We point out its flaws, and especially as it relates to plant-based diets. We've become the official nutrition partner of the Green Sports Alliance, which
Mhm.
every major league in the United States is a member. 200 venues and stadiums, 200 teams, all about the greening of sports, right? It used to be focused on changing incandescent bulbs to more energy
Sustainable
friendly. Yeah.
practices, yeah.
And now I gave the keynote speech in 2017 at their food symposium, and they've really shifted since then to like 80, 90% of their impact seems to be around plant based eating. So we've become their exclusive nutrition partner to put out with them a plant-powered performance playbook, and
Oh,
that's
cool.
in the works, like 140 pages long, and that's going to be coming out soon. We're working with another big sporting event. We're actually doing a collaboration with a tier one university, multi-million-dollar research project on the microbiome, plant-based diets, and athletic performance
Oh, great.
with Division
That's
One athletes. So yeah, we've got all that stuff in the works, and so we're still trying to have an impact. It's just people haven't really heard about it.
yeah.
This is the first
Yeah.
time people are
Oh,
we're
great.
hearing about it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that'll be
It's
rolling
more
out.
more
over
behind the
next-
scenes, but very impactful in the connections and the collaborations that you're
Yeah,
doing.
for sure. And
Yeah.
people, we've been building on stuff. So
Yeah.
some of it people won't hear much about, and then some of it, they'll hear about later this year and into 2021.
Mhm. Mhm. And are you still training at all these days?
Well, yeah, I have been. Obviously, with the pandemic, my
Yeah.
wife became my martial arts training partner.
Yeah.
Alicia, she's pretty good at kickboxing, but I got her into a bit of grappling too.
Yeah, it's like your garage. You converted your garage into a
Yeah,
little gym.
exactly. And then, but no, I was getting back into weights. In 2020, it was crazy. In 2019, traveling so much with doing screenings of the film and just wasn't training much. And I was like 190 pounds, and I got up to like 16.5% body fat, and just didn't have the muscle mass and wasn't really feeling in shape, despite being involved with the film. I just wasn't training
Mhm.
much, eating out a lot. And so I did a DEXA scan on December 31st, 2019. Yeah, it was a 190, like 16 something percent body fat, and then did it exactly a year later. And just because I wasn't traveling, and I was able to I was flipping tires, sledgehammer, and then once the
Mhm.
gyms opened back up, they were outdoors, able to do some compound lifts,
Mhm.
deadlift and bench and some lat stuff. And so I ended up just wasn't doing as much martial arts training, and ended up going up to around 200 pounds and dropping down to like 12% body fat. So
Mhm.
just showed you I'd never really tried before, and I still wasn't even trying to gain a whole bunch of muscle, but it just shows you
possible it
if you're
is.
just
Yeah.
eating the right plants, and obviously you've got to be cognizant about what you're eating a little bit.
Mhm.
Anyone should be sort of planning their diet a little bit, right? Not just eating a bunch of crap. And if you just put the work in, it shows that you can build muscle. Because a lot of times, people will say, well, oh, people already had the muscle and they're just
Yeah.
able to maintain it and that's it. But just to see the scale change and then to do the DEXA scan, I know no measurement is perfect, but those seem to be pretty reliable.
Yeah, it seems to be the most accurate for measuring that. I talked a little bit about this in the last episode with someone about feeling the pressure. I mean, do you ever feel like the pressure of like having to stay in shape because you are the guy from the Game Changers, and now you're like representative of an entire movement, and people refer to you as like, the ultimate fighter.
Yeah, for sure.
James
I mean, I think
Wilks.
mainly, because I'm not a bodybuilder or a strength athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of always feel like I should probably just focus on that. But I really enjoy martial arts, and it's obviously not as good for building muscle, right, as lifting weights. And so even in that 2020, I was still like swimming and running steps and hitting the heavy bag and doing some martial arts stuff. So I'd sort of find that balance between I've got to try to at least maintain the muscle mass, right, just because I'm sort of a figurehead, right, for the film and the Game Changers sort of ecosystem. And I do. I feel like there's a bit of pressure to like at least stay in shape. And
how do you balance that? Or do you listen to the noise at all, or just
I
tune
mean, it does. Yeah, just to be honest, it does impact me, and I probably wouldn't go in the gym as much if I didn't have to do any of this.
You didn't have to.
Yeah, because I'm not a huge fan of just working out for the sake of working out. I'm not a huge fan of I'd rather be like playing basketball or doing some jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? So I feel like I have to go
a little bit more like dynamic with like, using your mind and your body at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just because I'm enjoying it, and like the exercise is like a side benefit.
Yeah.
But I've got more into it now. My wife's super into it. She goes to the gym more than I do. I'm trying to get her to beat the California powerlifting record for her age group.
Yeah.
And I think she could beat it, actually.
She posted a picture of her deadlifting like a couple 100 pounds. Which
she was doing 245 for 10 reps. And she's only 100 and like under like 120. He weighs like 126.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And she's 45, so she's doing pretty good.
Yeah. You should. I was trying to get her to do it and convincing her to do it, and then you could just go be her cheerleader.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'd be a plus
the opposite way around.
Yeah.
So has anyone challenged you to a fight? And like a debate, like a fight,
serious, like a fight or a debate? I mean,
well, like a fight, like and bringing up the plant-based diet as a form of being less superior, more superior.
I know you're I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think it would be wise.
Yeah,
but
no, I see it's funny because I'll see some of the carnivore people.
Yeah.
Calling out some of the plant-based people and say, "Oh, if you want, we can also throw in a fight." I'm like, "Why are you picking? You're picking on a guy that doesn't even fight."
Yeah,
like I'll step in for that guy.
And that's why I asked, because like I've seen every single comment you could possibly see online, talking negatively about plant-based eatings or vegans or from the carnivore crowd or people that just get really emotional about it. So I would imagine that you may have stepped on some toes creating the film, and just the impact it's had. So just curious there.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Yeah, no one's seriously sort of said, "Hey, you want to fight and see how good you still are." But yeah,
if you're out there, let's
go. I used to have a really bad neck problem, and it did flare up recently. But I've been feeling like my martial arts skills are better than they've ever been. Like my jiu-jitsu's better, and I feel really good right now.
Are you still doing any like consulting or training for any like special groups or
actually
military?
Yesterday the Navy SEALs reached out and asked to do a new contract where it was like full time. Like I just don't have the time. I'll go and do some stuff occasionally with the military or law enforcement. But with the law enforcement, I like it because if they're not well trained, they end up having to resort to like more deadly force, right? But if officers are more trained, they can control the guy better. And when people aren't well trained, they're more scared, and when they're more scared, they're more likely to use higher levels of force. So if we can get them a little bit better trained, so they can just sort of control people rather than have to hit them or do the firearm stuff. So I do it very occasionally, but just don't have the time.
In your entire fighting career, what would you say are some of the biggest takeaways that you've learned just from doing the training, from being in Ultimate Fighter, from also training like armed forces as well? What would you say is something that anybody could walk away from based from like what you learned in your experience?
Yeah, do you mean like in terms of self-defense skill or just
or
like
just,
lessons?
It doesn't have to be self-defense. It could be any kind of insight that you.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the biggest things which you'll probably hear from people in a bunch of fields is consistency. In training, right? It's probably the same in bodybuilding. Like you get people that will go really hard for a bit and then they'll drop off, and so that's one of the biggest things I learned with training. If you're just consistent, those are the people that like the students that are just consistent. They might not come in with being the most gifted, right? But they're just consistent and diligent. And Also, always having that white belt mentality is really good. It's like once people get their black belts, it seems like once someone's had their black belt for a while, it's always like the brown belt, the one under that, that's actually better than the black belts because they're always a bit hungry.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to remain hungry. Your cup's got to be half full or half empty or whatever you want to view it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you don't want to think that your cup is full and sort of maintain that white belt mentality.
Yeah. Like you never arrived. Like you're always like
Yeah, it's a
learning, always
journey, right?
arriving.
It's
Yeah.
not like you're not trying to get. So
Yeah.
that's the thing with the whole belt system, right? It was created in the West. Like they just didn't have that, like in karate or whatever early on, wasn't a belt. And then there was a white and black, and then they decided to put like different
Stripes.
colors in
Yeah.
between, and there's
Yeah.
like 4 stripes on each one. It's like a money-making system
Oh, okay.
primarily, so they just didn't exist originally. And so although I have like 5 black belts or equivalent in different martial arts, I think you've got to maintain that white belt mindset that you're still looking to learn, And you can learn from people that are better than you, but you can also learn a lot just from, your students and that type of thing. But I think consistency is one of the biggest things about, I think there's a lot of lessons that you learn in sports and especially martial arts that you can translate into business or just the rest of life, and being consistent, connecting with the right people. There's even like in Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee's philosophy, there's like concepts like risk to reward ratio. Like when I throw a technique, like if I do a spinning back kick, the risk is you might grab my leg, slam my head on the concrete, and even if I hit you, it might just piss you off. Whereas if I throw an eye jab, right, it's like I'm not risking much, but I get you in the eyes, and that causes you to do this. So like risk to reward ratio, economy of motion, right? There's all these sort of things that are like being efficient. These things like translate into everyday life or into business.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
That's super fascinating. So what you mentioned consistency. So what allowed you to be so consistent? Because I see it all the time with clients that even I train or people at the gym, and just in life. I also struggle with consistency in certain areas in life. Not so much with physical training, but like other areas. So what has been your main driver for remaining consistent?
I think it's passion. You know what I mean? I think you've got to find stuff you're passionate about, because otherwise it's like a chore, right? Like I remember like in school, in England you can drink much younger. So when I was like 17, 18, they'd have like a bar a couple of days a week, and just happened to fall on the same day as the taekwondo training at the time. And I was like, come on, go to that. I always just skipped the bar, right? Going for drinks because I had the taekwondo to go to, and I was just passionate about it. I was into like the Bruce Lee movies and then reading a lot of his philosophy, and that was the only sort of art that was available at the school at the time. And I just sort of, later on in university, I started doing more martial arts training than studying for my degree. But I think it's just the passion, right? And you've got to find the things that like give you a sense of purpose and passion. I think the Japanese call it like the ikigai.
Yeah,
you've seen that.
Yeah, I have.
And so just finding that, and I think it's like it's not a chore; it's enjoyable to be consistent. But I think if you're not being consistent, you're probably looking at it like, is this something? Not always, right? I think sometimes you've got to do things that you don't want to do in order to achieve things you want to achieve. But generally, if you can find things that you're passionate about, you're going to enjoy it and you're going to be consistent.
Yeah, I feel like too many people try things and they're not really in it or they don't know why they're doing the things that they're doing. I think that's also very important, is understanding your why. Because whenever the time comes where you don't feel like doing it, like what's going to keep you showing up?
Right.
Like when you're tired, when you're uncomfortable, when you're stressed out, when you got all the other things going on in life, like what's going to keep you going?
Right. And I think a lot of people are influenced like either by their parents or their peer group or whatever, and to like, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing, right? Or this is the normal path or whatever. And so I think you've got to really make sure that internally that something you really want to do.
So what's the next like why for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm just super driven still. Like, I don't think we're there yet in terms of plant-based eating. So I'm just trying to do whatever I can to, sort of further that goal. I think I'm also always growing, there's personal growth around relationships and being a dad and all this stuff that's really important to me. And also now it's about time I got to try and make some money, because I spent like 10 years doing martial arts because I was super passionate about it. And then, like the better of 10 years now with the film, and then, a couple of years now of the nonprofit afterwards. So while we're keeping that going, just got to figure out how to, make sure I get enough money for when I retire. So that's got to figure that out too.
How has that been? I mean, I'm sure that a lot of companies, especially in the plant-based space, have, really benefited from the GameChangers film. What is it like to feel like you have, some part in that? And,
and
not making
it's a little bit mixed, right? Because I'm not benefiting financially from any of it.
Yeah.
So it's great to see. And I've had literally companies say, "Hey, we've made tens of millions of dollars because of the Game Changers." I'm like, "Okay, you want to kick me some?" Or,
Yeah, cut me a bonus check or something.
And even like before the film came out, people wanted to do product placement in the film. We said
Yeah.
no. We didn't take any corporate money, any corporate sponsorship. I was offered stock in a bunch of companies early on. Turned it all down. Even when the film came out, people offered me stock as sort of being a founder of the company without putting any money in. And I just, at the time, I just wasn't, I just didn't want people to think that we made the film to make money, because we didn't, right? We made it for the impact. And if we can eventually turn that into some money, I've got no problem with business or whatever, and if people can do that in an ethical and environmentally friendly way. But we just didn't want people to think that that's why we made it, because we didn't. And so it's been over 2 years now since the premieres in LA and New York and London, and we still haven't really monetized that. We've been doing the nonprofit stuff, but eventually I do want to, figure that out so that there's some money in there for to retire.
It's interesting too, because I feel like if another maybe group came out with a documentary, they would definitely accept, the money or the stock and equity in companies. Why do you feel like, the vegan movement, it's so important to have done that, to refrain from taking any or accepting any financial backing?
Yeah, I don't think in general, it depends what you're doing. I just think when you're doing a documentary that's based on information and science, we don't want that to be tainted by industry money. So, and we wanted people to be we wanted to be very overt about that, not try and hide anything. So I think for the documentary, it was very important, depending on what you're doing. I'm not against, vegan influencers taking, if they believe in the product, What I don't like is when, not just in the sort of vegan space, but when influencers just promote stuff because it's just because they're getting paid. So I got nothing against, people that are plant-based promoting plant-based products if they believe in them and getting paid for it. Fine. I mean, everyone's got to make money and live, right? I just think for the documentary, we just didn't want any corporate influence and wanted people to know that. So, but eventually we'll move into some sort of place so we can actually make some money out of it.
Yeah, well, hopefully some of these companies that are watching, send this guy some.
Well, it's just that I don't there's a lot of companies that I don't really necessarily believe in the products. There's some that I certainly do.
Yeah,
I've occasionally sort of mentioned something, but I've never
you must get bombarded by like a million plant-based products coming at you every single day.
Yeah, there's companies that have asked us to run their company.
Yeah,
because we did a great job promoting sort of the film and everything, and then other people just trying to get us to promote stuff. And I've promoted a few things here and there just because I believe in them, but we're never taking any payment for any of it.
Do you feel like, because you kind of gone through like a reinvention a few times between being a fighter and then you mentioned being a father as well. Like how is that? Like has that like allowed you to kind of soften, to be, like you mentioned, relationship and being a father? Like how is that like world? It feels very different, the fighting and the aggression, dominating versus like being a soft, like fatherly figure.
Yeah, I mean, people have got lots of different elements to them, right? It's like you don't want to pigeon people into one thing. But yeah, I was thinking like, what's my next step? Because it's going to have to begin with F, because you're like fighter, filmmaker, father.
Yeah,
I have to think of another F next. But yeah, I think that the one of the biggest challenges with that stuff is like balancing the time, between like family and either making money or doing something you're really passionate about, with this nonprofit. But I don't know if you've seen some of that research that shows like when people get married, their testosterone goes down, and when they live with their partner, the testosterone goes down.
No, I haven't seen that.
The testosterone goes down. So yeah.
What was the conclusion there?
I don't know. I think like people are like more driven to like have more testosterone and to drive to like get a partner, and then like to have children, and then once they've got those, then they're like less driven to do it.
Yeah, that black belt mentality.
Yeah, I got it now. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to work as hard.
You
anymore.
get the dad bod,
Yeah,
you're just not working as hard now, and you're already got a partner.
There's nothing wrong with dad bods here, as long as you're healthy and you're happy.
Yeah,
that's all that matters. Anything else you want to share, or you want to leave the audience with a message or anything?
I mean, people should go check out Eating Our Way to Extinction, because I think it's got some great science and it's informative, and might inspire some people to shift towards more plant-based diets, or perhaps back up if they were into health and performance. Maybe it's another element to interest them. Keep an eye out for stuff we're doing with GameChangers Institute. A lot of people, I mean, we've had millions and millions of people go on the Game Changers movie website, but a lot of people don't know there's a bunch of recipes on there and tips. And so if they haven't seen that, go check that out. But no, not really. Just follow Game Changers movie on Instagram and Lightning Wilks on Instagram as well for my page if they're interested. And I don't post as much as I should. Not as much as you. I'm not as good at social media.
Well, you did enough. You don't have to post. You spent the last 8 years making a movie. Yeah, dude. I just want to thank you, like, in this forum, like, for giving me an opportunity to be a part of something that is. I still like pinch myself every day that I got to be a part of that. And I know, like you mentioned earlier, just how many people you filmed and that didn't make the cut. Yeah. And I was relatively late. Right. You know, I was brought in very late in the project, and I'm just super grateful for being included in that.
No, I mean, same goes back to you. I mean, thanks for being involved, and you've helped promote it all, and just what you're doing in general, and to be such a great role model for someone that's never eaten meat and now doesn't eat any animal products at all, and showing, how amazing shape you can be in and build muscle. It's thanks for everything you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. And I actually want to, like, just before, I don't think I ever asked you, like, how did you get in touch with me? Like, I don't remember exactly how this conversation started.
I would guess social media, but I can't remember. Yeah, probably don't know. Must have been following some hashtags.
And it's popped up.
Yeah,
because I just want to share this because I remember the conversation. I don't remember if you shared how you found me or how we got in contact. Maybe a mutual friend or something, but it was like the day before I was going on stage at a bodybuilding show. And we were talking, and I was in a hotel room, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take this call, this guy. And we get off the phone, and I was like, this guy, like, said a lot of things. I was like, I don't know if I believe him or not. But I'm just going to give it a shot and say that, like, if he does follow through with all these things, you mentioned like James Cameron and all this stuff. I was like, I don't think James Cameron is going to be involved in any kind of documentary. Like, get real. And then, we ended up reconnecting. We stayed in touch the whole time, but we reconnected like a year and a half later.
Yeah.
And you were filming, somebody else. And then you said, you were like, hey, do you want to be a part of the film? But that also happened to be as soon as I left my job.
Right.
Yeah, it was right at the same time I had made the decision to leave my job, and then this opportunity falls into my lap. So I believe in, like, divine timing and like really what you were mentioning earlier, like following the thing that you're passionate about, and the rest kind of falling into place once you really align yourself with that.
Yeah.
And you're like also a huge testament of that, of just like continuing, being consistent, and following through with what you set out to do, and look at what you've been able to accomplish. So
yeah. I mean, on the one hand, I don't like it always where people say, well, if you just decide you can do it, you can do it, because not everyone has all the same opportunities. But I definitely think there's a lot of people stuck in doing jobs that they don't enjoy and don't really focus. And then later on, you'll look back. Like when I was 30 years old, that was what really turning 30 for me is like, holy shit, I'm an adult now. I need to start doing something. And I don't want to look back and say I could have been in the UFC, and my roommates at the time were watching The Ultimate Fight, and they're like, I said, I can beat all those guys. They're like, well, go on then. Stop talking about it. Just go and do it. And so I think so many people talk about the things that they could do, and then later on they'll be looking back and saying, well, I could have done that. So yeah, if you can just find stuff you're passionate about, you're just gonna have a much better life, and hopefully doing that while eating lots of plants.
Yeah, I love that. That's a perfect place to end it. Thanks again, James, for being on the show. If you don't follow him, follow him. If you haven't watched the Game Changers, go watch the Game Changers. If you haven't gone onto the Game Changers website or the Game Changers Institute, be sure to go check them out too, because they're doing some incredible things. And I'm really excited to see what comes from that and all the projects that you're working on. And also, don't forget to watch Eating Our Way to Extinction as well, so you can continue learning about the benefits of eating plants, not only for yourself, but for the benefits of this planet that we all share. So thank you so much for tuning in. Sending you all love and light.